why does somebody need commercial insurance? It's probably easier to say, why do they not? So in the litigious society we're in these days, business owners really can be approached through lawsuits, many different angles.
All right, we have got Brandon Wooden with Valor Insurance, a commercial business expert with us today, and we're going to talk all things commercial insurance. Welcome, Brandon. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me today, Harley.
So tell us, why does somebody need commercial insurance?
Yeah, so why does somebody need commercial insurance? It's probably easier to say, why do they not? So in the litigious society we're in these days, business owners really can be approached through lawsuits, many different angles. So your business owner, you think traditionally insurance is going to be something like your slip and fall, maybe somebody comes in and causes something to get injured. Obviously, there's products for that, but as technology has advanced, businesses have advanced, you have a whole new realm of insurance products that are there for you. So what used to just be your, general liability and workers' comp was kind of the meat and two sides for a business owner to protect themselves. How now have tons of different things. You have fleets of vehicles for companies. You have cyber insurance, which is going to become more and more prevalent as we continue to move forward. Have a lot of that. Everything you see now, you're going to continue to see cyber being pushed more and more. There's even insurance carriers who have been subject to cyber insurance attacks before in the past. So it's kind of twofold, like, hey, we're providing the coverage for this, but we also fell victim to it. So just there's a lot of different aspects, and hopefully we can dive into some of those avenues today to get down to the meat of it.
Awesome. So before we get into more questions like that, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background in insurance and the brokerage you're with.
Yeah. So I have been here with this brokerage since 2019. I graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in finance. Originally from Chickamauga, Georgia. Knew I wanted to move back home, work somewhere in town. Didn't really know what I wanted to do though. And a colleague of mine, Jack, I've been friends with him for a while, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. He was in Athens as I was approaching graduation, invited me to go to breakfast one morning. He basically said, hey, if you don't know what you want to do, just give insurance a shot. At a bare minimum, you're going to get to meet some business owners in town, and maybe you'll see an avenue you want to go down from that. I gave it a shot, and here I am now. So I've been here since May of 2019. There's been a few changes. What started as me, Jack, and maybe one or two other people, we now have a solid team of 10 and growing, located here on the North Shore. We've been here the entire time. And as you mentioned, we're Valor Insurance Brokers as of last week, formerly the American Insurance Group. So that rebrand was something we wanted to have an identity as a brokerage, because that's more of what we are. We're here to consult you, give you our advice, and put together a risk management strategy for you. And that aligned with our goals. We wanted something simpler, something that we could market better. Well, less syllables anytime you're having to describe something to somebody is always better, it seems like. And so we went from the American Insurance Group to Valor Insurance Brokers. And yeah, we're over here, we're rocking and rolling.
Awesome. So when you're talking to a business owner, what are some of the most common questions you get when you're helping them get commercial insurance?
Yeah, so for the new business owners, one of the first questions I'm going to lead off with are, what are your expectations for the insurance? What are you hoping it will provide you? What benefits are you wanting to see from that? And really get to understand any maybe pain points they've had. If they've had previous insurance, I really want to know what those pain points have been so that I can be sure I'm addressing them. We're in the people business. You're in the people business. We can sell our products and services however we want to, but ultimately we've got to take care of our clients and our prospects at the end of the day. So that's what I'm aiming to do. I really just want to see what their expectations of insurance are. And if they're too far-fetched, every little thing, every dollar I lose out on, I want to use insurance for, well, then we may have to adjust those expectations a bit and understand how insurance is going to step into the realm to protect them from those large losses, and maybe not anything that's nitpicky. So that's the first thing, is understanding what their expectations are for insurance, and then explaining how I can address those expectations and any issues that they have.
And I'm sure you get this all the time. People come and say like, well, I have an LLC. I don't need insurance.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah. So that LLC, that first of all, that's a great start. You're protecting yourself personally from that liability through that LLC, but you still have to protect that LLC. I mean, if your business is in an LLC, that LLC is still going to be subject to litigation. Yeah, it can protect you. There's some liability protections to you personally, but you still want to protect that business. I mean, that's your income stream, that's your revenue, that is your business ultimately. However, if you have a DBA, if you just have the LLC, so you want to be sure you're protecting that every way that you can so that you're not having to potentially restart all over in the event of a serious lawsuit or claim.
So in the commercial insurance front, what would you say are like the most common types? I mean, you kind of mentioned workers' comp, liability, cyber. Are there other more specialty ones, or are those pretty much like the top 3 or 4 that everyone's just like, hey, you need, if you've got a business and you've got employees, you need these things?
Yeah. So what we're always going to start with, you always want to be sure you've got the basics. And in our phone calls when we're getting to know clients or in our meetings, we're making sure we understand how many employees do you have? Do you have any vehicles? Because workers' comp and business audit, those are two lines of business you're probably going to have claims on at some point, especially commercial auto. I mean, the commercial auto market's insane right now, but you really want to start with the fundamentals, your general liability, your commercial auto, your workers' comp, assuming you have those things. And then you can dive into some other aspects. So, you've got your errors and omissions if you're any type of professional providing any kind of service. So, attorneys, accountants, um, real estate agents, really anyone has to have that E&O coverage in the case that they give bad advice and it ends up resulting in the client losing money. So there are some you can go down cyber, directors and officers liability, like if you have nonprofits, that's a big one. So there are many different kind of niche coverages for you and your business that can fall under the spectrum of the commercial insurance umbrella, more or less.
Do you have any stories of kind of like, hey, here's like the horror story of someone I've heard of or a client and they didn't have insurance or didn't have the right kind of insurance, and talk
Yeah.
about.
So I don't have one personally. I do have one, another insurance agent out of Tampa, Florida. So I went to a conference this spring in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was sharing an example of just a contractor client he has in his agency, and they're an HVAC contractor. Well, he was trying to stress the importance of cyber insurance. Average cyber insurance claims over $400,000. A lot of small business owners don't know that, and that they're actually targeted. They think, well, I'm not big enough to where somebody would come after me. That's part of the reason they come after you, because they know that you probably don't have the infrastructure a lot of those larger businesses do. Yeah, there may be less meat on the bone, but if they can go through and attack you and hit you with ransomware, or hold your business credentials and information hostage, they can do a lot of those at once with small businesses, and a lot of people don't know that. So he was trying to tell this contractor, hey, you need cyber coverage. And the guy said, well, we go out and repair HVAC systems, install HVAC systems. I don't need cyber coverage. And he said, well, after you complete your service, your guys have an iPad with a little square on there to where they can go ahead and pay if they want to. You don't have to wait on net 30, net 60, net 90, whatever your receivables are. He said, yeah. He said, well, all of their information for their payments are being stored in your system when you're processing those payments. I said, yeah. And he said, you need cyber coverage. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not spending $6,000 a year on cyber insurance. And it was a fairly sized business. Well, they're very close friends. They go out on a fishing trip on a family vacation. And he basically, it, on the boat, he looks at the business owner and says, hey, last time I'm doing this, you need cyber insurance. I said, I'm just not spending that amount of money on cyber insurance. He said, okay, that's fine. I want you to have this. Hands him a piece of paper. The guy opens the piece of paper and looks at it. And on there are about 14 different websites with banking username, password, all of this, what he thought was private, confidential information. He hands it over to him. He said, where did you get this? He said, this is what I did in 10 to 15 minutes on the dark web. Imagine somebody that actually wants to attack you, what they could do.
Wow.
And before they got off the boat, he had completed the DocuSign for the cyber insurance.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stories like that, and you see them more and more online. But that's one that sticks out to me because you really don't understand the importance. You'll hear a lot of people all the time. The pushback is, well, I can't afford that. Well, you also can't afford not to have that, because we've seen businesses here in town that fall victim to ransomware and social engineering. Where, I mean, we met with some lenders this morning, and they were sharing a story of how their bank, somebody actually called in. It was a scam, but trying to initiate a wire transfer on behalf of a client. And they had called the client's actual phone number. And the client said just a few little words. And they took an AI generative tool to replicate his voice. He called the bank. The banker, who had a working relationship with this person, met with them in person, thought it was him. And they initiated a wire transfer for that person. So that type of stuff happens all the time,
Mhm.
and it's not really something you think about as a business owner. You think of, oh, well, my building caught on fire. You know, I can't operate, which that's a very real risk, especially for like restaurants. But you don't think about the stuff like that, the cybersecurity aspect of it.
Yeah, and I will say I am a client of Brandon's for cyber insurance. And one of the great things that the policy includes is employee cybersecurity training. It's totally free with the policy. And so all of our staff, the virtual professionals, when they're onboarded, they have to go through this training and they have to pass it before they can be placed with a client. And it has really helped a lot because there were situations before we had this where we would get like a kind of a phishing email that would go to
Mhm.
one of our employees through their client's email service, and they would open it because they're very trusting. They want to help and make sure everything's taken care of. And it could have been, a bad situation had it not been caught quickly. And now with that malware training, that's one of like the weakest links is the human factor. So having that training is really, that's worth the full price of the policy itself.
Absolutely. And it helps the carrier out too, because when your employees are more well trained and well rounded to see that type of stuff, it's going to help the carrier too, because your potential for risk is lower at that point.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit also about kind of insurance for real estate investors. I do a lot
Yeah.
of real estate investing. A lot of our clients are big real estate investors. Tell me about like what does commercial insurance for real estate investors look like?
Yeah. So that's actually, I would say that's where we try to focus and target on, and where we separate ourselves from other firms here in town. Our presence is, we're pretty heavy in the Southeast, but we have real estate investors all across the country. And for a real estate investor, there's so many different things that could happen. So you could be buying a single family property, you could be buying a 100-unit apartment complex, you could be building one, you could be buying self-storage units, you could be, house hacking more or less. And your typical run-of-the-mill insurance agent may not know, well, I'm living in this room, but I'm renting out two other rooms house hacking, or I live in the upstairs and I rent my basement out. I don't really know how to do that. We focus on that. That's really where we are the experts at. We give the advice. And so there's a lot of different things that, as a real estate investor, you don't think about. We run across policies all the time for huge apartment complexes. Hey, love to get down, get to know you, take you out to lunch, whatever. Just get a sit down, really. You want that first meeting with the person, with the investor. And eventually it comes to the point where, hey, would you mind taking a look at my stuff? And you look at it and you've got this big 25-unit apartment complex, and they've only got business income covered for $50,000. I'm no math expert. I'm not going to stretch it and say that that's my, forte, but I'm willing to bet that 25-unit apartment complex is generating more than $50,000 a year in rental.
Yeah.
If the place were to burn down, you're going to be out way more than that. And it's just little things like that. It really goes back to, for the property investors, what has your pain point been? Has it been lack of service? Has it been, I don't know if I have good coverage? Has it been like with you? I know we came in and consolidated everything into a single policy, give you a platform to where you can add and remove properties at the speed of, your own music. You don't have to call us. Whatever the pain point is, we try to have a solution for those property investors to make it easier on them. And then it comes back, it helps us, because when we help a client, they have friends more than likely that are also property investors. You run around with the same type of folks, and then they send them our way. And we've been very fortunate to build that kind of referral basis in the property investor space, which started here in town and has just kind of expanded rapidly.
So what are some of the differences in coverage that investor might need for their, whether they're house hacking or just owning a bunch of rentals that is different than a typical like homeowner's residential insurance policy?
Yeah, so one big piece is going to be, depending on the carrier, there's different verbiage that they use. But one thing you're going to want to be sure you have on there is home sharing. So a home sharing endorsement is basically letting the carrier know, hey, there are other people that aren't the people on this policy that are going to be living there. There's a business aspect, more or less, to this standard homeowners policy. And that's basically letting them take that into account from a liability standpoint. Yes, it does add cost to the policy, but it's also giving the carrier the full picture, so that if you eventually have a claim, you're not having to explain yourself to the carrier. They didn't know that there was essentially a tenant living there. It presents issues down the road in the event of a large claim. I always say like honesty is the best policy up front.
You know?
Paint as clear a picture as you can and make sure that the carrier understands exactly what they're bringing on. You don't really want to tiptoe around that. You don't want to just write a standard homeowners policy for the sake of winning the account because you're cheaper. You always want to be sure you're giving them the most well-rounded coverage and that the carrier understands the risk completely. So if you're Airbnb-ing it, you live there part-time, it may be a secondary home for you. Uh, if you live there primarily and you're house hacking, you've got that home sharing endorsement on there so that they understand, okay, my insurance is actually protecting me and I'm not. There's just something about it to be like living in a home and renting a room out. You're kind of tiptoeing, like you're flirting with it almost of I'm being a little sneaky here with the carrier. They don't understand the full picture. Um, it's just kind of one of those things. It's like if you're buying a house and you say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to live here," and then you rent it out. Just you don't feel good about it as you're going through the whole process, and just be transparent makes it a lot easier on you down the road.
So is it possible that a carrier could like deny a pretty significant claim? Let's say you're house hacking and one of your tenants creates a fire and it like has, tens of thousands of dollars of damage in the kitchen. Could the carrier come and say, like, well, you didn't tell us you were renting this out. This is like a different, situation than what you have insurance for. Could they deny that?
So it would very much depend on the carrier, the type of policy form you have, really how robust the policy is, and if, there's a good relationship with that carrier. The carriers know to pay out on those claims and stuff. But I could very easily see a scenario where you know you're not transparent with the carrier, and then it present issues with the payout being made in the event of a serious claim. It's just like some folks will make a duplex more or less. They'll go in and separate a home into two units and it's on a standard homeowners policy. Well, the carrier may not do, multifamily stuff. Well, that's an entirely different issue because they have strict underwriting guidelines saying, hey, we won't do multifamily. So that's an issue. And ultimately it can come back. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but as an insurance agent, we have E&O also because you can imagine a scenario where an insurance agent may give coverage that you don't, doesn't protect you the way it should. And then you file that claim, it doesn't pay anything out. Well, the client's under the impression you communicated to them that they were covered, they had this coverage. So there's a way to where payout can be made, but at that point, it's probably going to come down to the carrier and the insurance agent have a conversation. And depending on the payout on that, it can result in, the insurance agent losing that contract, severing that relationship where you can't ride with that carrier anymore. And so not only is it a risk to the client, but it also can present a risk to the insurance agent.
Well, and you bring up a good point there about that coverage not being there that you say is that's actually one of the big factors that brought me to working with Brandon in the first place. When I was starting this business, I was looking to get insurance for it. And the insurance agent I was with, I very clearly explained exactly what we were doing, got a policy, and it just didn't seem right. And so I sent it over to Brandon's team. They took a look at it and they're like, well, this policy specifically excludes the activity you're doing here, Harley. So if there was a claim on it, you'd be totally left out in the weeds and have no coverage. So having that person who's actually looking out for your interest, making sure it is giving you the coverage you need and not just trying to get you to sign the policy because it's like the cheapest option is hugely important.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a good point there that you just brought up. We run across that a ton. We will meet with business owners wherever it's at, and they hand us, they want to do a review. They've been with the same agent forever, and whatever the situation may be, the agent may have retired. They may have, went to a different industry, jumped ship, moved to a different firm, have a non-compete, whatever the case is, and they may be just getting a second opinion for the first time in years. Well, XYZ Business LLC is actually, a metal fabrication company, and you look at their policy and they're rated on an office sales class code. And well, the carrier you're with won't even do your class of business. And then you're back in the exact same situation I just told you about for the property investor of the carrier didn't know this. Did the agent, was there a misrepresentation? Was the business owner deceitful in some way? There's a lot of different factors that go into it, but that's something we have run across personally is your policy is rated on a different class of business. And it's really tough when the pain point is, hey, my price just doubled. And then you have to say, well, it's probably going to go up by about 3 or 4x because they have you as just all office clerical and you're out here in the shop with a welder welding metal together, or, you're turning wrenches, you're, a mechanic, whatever it is. And those are riskier class codes than if you just have people that are sitting in an office on a computer all day.
Yeah. So besides the expert insight and incredible customer service, what would you say really sets you and your team at Valor Insurance apart from others? Like, are there types of insurance in the business world or like real estate that you guys have really great carriers for? You just knock out of the park every time?
Yeah, so we definitely have some carriers that we can, anytime we see them on a review that we're doing, we feel confident saying, hey, we're going to win this account because we can probably offer better coverage at a better price.
Mhm.
We definitely have that. But I would say one aspect of our team that really sets us apart from other firms is our age. The oldest person in our office is 28 years old. A lot of people, watching this may say, oh, well, that's scary. I'm painting insurance to a bunch of 20-something-year-olds. But we actually look at it the exact opposite. If you're a new business owner, you know that you have an insurance agent that's going to be in this thing for the long haul. They've been in the industry for 4 or 5 years, and they're going to grow with your business. You don't have to worry about the average age in the insurance industry. My guess would probably be somebody in their 50s or 60s, us being in our 20s. Well, you've already got a 30 or 48-year age gap there where you're getting to make sure you still have your person. And, that's been a real opportunity for us. These first, second, third generation businesses, as they hand down to the new generation, those younger business owners want a relationship with a younger insurance agent, somebody that they know is going to be around for the long haul. It's just one less thing they have to worry about. And then we help build that credibility and trust to where they know that we're going to be there for them.
Perfect. Well, Brendan, I really appreciate your taking the time to share your expertise on commercial insurance with us. If people want to get in touch with you and get a review of their commercial policies, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, for sure. So you would just shoot me an email. It is Brandon, Brandon, at valorbrokers.com, or you can call our office. If I'm not in the office for whatever reason, we have a great team here in Chattanooga, and our phone number is 423-362-4166.
Awesome. Well, everyone, be sure to reach out to Brandon, send him your insurance policies, let him take an expert look at those. And again, Brandon, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Harley.